thank the senator from Kentucky for allowing me to ask him a series of questions and to address both what the Attorney General said and the substantive issue. I want to begin my questioning, though, by simply an observation, and I want to take a moment to thank the senator from Kentucky. I have had the privilege of serving in this body 9 weeks, and today is the first day I have ever had the extraordinary privilege of speaking on the floor of the Senate. And on my first time to speak in the floor of the Senate, I found myself being given the chance to read from Travis's letter from the Alamo. As I observed walking off the floor of the Senate, as they say in the beer commercial, it don't get no better than this. So I thank the senator from Kentucky for giving me the opportunity to be welcomed to the floor of the Senate and having a chance to stand with him fighting for liberty. Now, there are a number of things I'd like to address and ask the senator from Kentucky's views on. I'll begin by observing, as I did the last time the senator from Kentucky and I had a colloquy, that Twitter never sleeps. And we heard from a number of tweets across the country, but those have not ceased. And so, since the senator from Kentucky is still prohibited from looking at his cell phone, I wanted to prevent him from going into technology shock and withdrawal and provide an in-person Twitter feed for you. This is about the Constitution. Stand with Rand. Get it together, GOP. Stand with Rand. Rand praising Dem Oregon Senator Ron Wyden for raising the same questions and concerns he has. Where are all the other Dems? Sad day when killing Americans is up for debate. Sad that every senator is not up there with him. Stand with Rand. We are watching you guys. I don't know how Senator Rand Paul does it. I'm tired just from watching him. A tip of the cap to you, sir. Thank you. Stand with Rand. Senator Rand Paul is extemporaneously giving a better human rights speech than Barack Obama ever has. Stand with Rand. And I'm pretty certain, for the record, I can confirm that no teleprompter was in front of the senator from Kentucky's desk. Senator Rand Paul. Jimmy Stewart would be proud, sir. Senator Rand Paul. Look what's trending. Stand with Rand. It's been a while since I could say I am a proud American. Thank you, Rand Paul. Stand with Rand. Rand Paul might be waiting a long time for an answer from the White House. Stand with Rand. I would note it has been 10 hours, so that would indeed be a correct observation of fact. At Democrats, why not just agree that the POTUS cannot use drones to summarily kill U.S. citizens on U.S. soil? Stand with Rand. Senator Rand Paul crosses 8-hour threshold of filibuster. Stand with Rand. Stand with Rand, please. Senator Rand Paul did not filibuster for the right or the left. He did it for every person in this country. Stand with Rand. Once you give up your rights, you will not get them back. Believe that. Stand with Rand. We should all go to the U.S. Capitol and stand with Rand. And I would note that quite a few members of the House of Representatives have crossed over the Capitol and joined us precisely to stand with Rand, as have the men and women in the gallery who have been here throughout this long and historic stand. Finally able to sit and watch the Rand Paul filibuster. Just epic. Stand with Rand. Read the Constitution and explain why each sentence is relevant to today. Not worthless and outdated. 7 hours and counting for Senator Rand Paul in the filibuster. This can end, Brennan. Just say you won't unilaterally kill us. Stand with Rand. America is watching. Stand with Rand. I get the feeling that a more libertarian stance is the only thing which can bring about a fresh start for the GOP. Stand with Rand. I stand with Rand in his 9th hour, awaiting the president saying he doesn't have the power to kill Americans at will. Quote, I haven't killed anyone yet, and I have no intention of killing Americans, but I might. End quote, President Barack Obama. Stand with Rand. The federal government was closed today, yet Senator Rand Paul was working overtime. You demand, and that would be D-A-M-A-N is the precise spelling of that. Senator Rand Paul, 100% supports you. Keep going. Stand with Rand. This isn't a filibuster. This is a line in the sand drawn with a quill pen that penned the Constitution. I think that one's particularly cool. Do you agree with your colleague, Representative Justin Amash? Stand with Rand. Almost always the answer to that one should be yes. Do you stand with Senator Rand Paul and demand an answer from the White House on extrajudicial assassinations of Americans? There's a word we don't hear too often within our own borders, assassinations. And yet that's exactly what we're talking about here tonight. Don't think I've ever been quite so proud to say I'm from Kentucky. Stand with Rand. Senator Rand Paul getting to the heart of issues, not partisan politics, but a question of due process. He's just about 8 hours away from having the 5th longest filibuster. I apologize to the senator from Kentucky if that is less than encouraging. Stand with Rand. I have a renewed sense of hope for our leaders in Washington today. Thank you, Senator Rand Paul, for standing by we the people. Stand with Rand. I am a strong liberal supporter and 2-time Obama voter. I stand with Rand. Dr. Rand Paul, excellent, excellent work today. We stand with Rand too. I hope Senator Rand Paul can keep them up all night. There hasn't been a real filibuster on the Senate floor in years. Stand with Rand. And I would note, as I was walking in, that this is certainly the least well-shaven I have been on the Senate floor. And it is particularly ironic that the desk I am sitting at, in addition to having been the former desk of a great hero of mine, Senator Barry Goldwater, was also the former desk of Senator Richard Nixon, and so perhaps that spirit is animating the 5 o'clock shadow that I find myself at 10 o'clock at night sporting. Stand with you, I do. Stand with Rand. I wonder if that one was from Dr. Seuss. Stand with Rand because you have the freedom to do so. Obama is going to have to address the points raised by Paul. I stand with Rand. Best line of the filiblizzard thus far. Retweet yet another of Senator Rand Paul's miraculous tweets that he did from the floor of the Senate. A tweet of Senator Rand Paul, quote, "They shouldn't just drop a Hellfire missile on your cafe experience." I would suggest to the senator from Kentucky that at the end of what I am sure will be a long and very distinguished career in politics, fighting for every American, that with statements like that, a subsequent career at Starbucks may indeed be promising. The fight for liberty has a real hero. May the spirits of past patriots fuel you. Until you get an answer, Rand, keep on going. Let's take it into tomorrow. Is suspicion enough? Obviously not. Senator Rand Paul. If you have family or friends in the Middle East, you might be a terrorist. Stand with Rand. For the first time since November, I feel like I see a light at the end of the tunnel. It's a long tunnel. Stand with Rand. Senator Rand Paul, quote, "If you have no bounds, you have an unlimited imperial presidency." So true. Senator Rand Paul, 8 hours and still going strong. Thank you for standing for the Constitution. God bless you. Stand with Rand. Thank you, Rand Paul, for standing up for our Constitution. We are behind you. Stand with Rand. Go get 'em, Rand Paul. Great way to end my birthday. Stand with Rand. I hope we do not make it to that individual's next birthday. Best TV I've seen in a while. Stand with Rand. Senator Rand Paul, I'm super proud of my senator today. I've always been proud of him, but today I'm more proud than ever. Stand with Rand, written in all caps. My kids watching Rand Paul give a lesson to the country on their own without me telling them to. Stand with Rand. Thank you, Senator Rand Paul. Why won't Obama say that he won't use drones to kill non-combatant U.S. citizens on U.S. soil? Seems a simple question. Stand with Rand. Senator Rand Paul, thank you. Be encouraged and stay strong. Would stand there with you if we could. We're no longer free. Thank you for standing up for freedom. Stand with Rand is trending worldwide. That's pretty darn cool. Rand Paul goes into his 9th hour of filibuster over drones. Watch it here, and I won't read the link to C-SPAN. Senator Rand Paul, I'm so proud of you. Way to stand tall. Stand with Rand. Senator Rand Paul, your loyalty and dedication to we the people are not going unnoticed. Stand with Rand. If you give back your rights, don't ever expect them to get them back. Stand with Rand. Call the White House, 202-456-1111. Take a stand. You know, for some reason, I feel compelled to read that tweet a second time. Call the White House, 202-456-1111. Rand Paul, standing for liberty and freedom, God bless you. Stand with Rand. Rand Paul, the 21st century version of Washington, Jefferson, and Madison. No matter how you fall politically, you have to admire Rand Paul's absolute conviction. I can't stop watching Senator Rand Paul filibuster. Greatness. Stand with Rand. Are you going to retweet Stand with Rand all night? I am. Liberty. Rand Paul. And the final one, Senator Rand Paul, I'm a grandma who just learned how to Twitter tonight so that I could stand with Rand and the Constitution. Now, the first question I will ask of the senator from Kentucky, and I have several more, is simply, what would you say to these millions of Americans and people worldwide who are coming together to stand with Rand?
Mr. President, I thank the senator from Texas for coming to the floor, and I'm overwhelmed with all of the responses. What I would say is that I think there are things that are more important than personalities, more important than party, and they're the things that our country's founded upon. And I mean, these are the things that I think bring people together who really want us to stand up and say that these protections will exist. The interesting thing about our Constitution is it You know, it protects people who are defenseless often. Those who can be falsely accused of crimes are what the Constitution is there for. So I think there are people from all walks of life who say, you know, my brother was falsely accused, or my brother was put in jail for 5 years or something for something either they didn't do or it was an inappropriate sentence. I think people understand the idea of wanting to be protected from false accusation, not only for something where you might be put in prison, but for something in this case you might be killed for. And that we all understand, I mean, all you got to do is get online to read comments to any kind of story online to know that people make all kinds of wild accusations and wild comments online. Do we really want to be that is one of the indications for whether or not you might be targeted for surveillance or whether you might be targeted for a drone strike? That anything like this could happen really without you having your due process, that the Fifth Amendment somehow would be optional, that the executive branch would decide when they're going to apply the Fifth Amendment. So I'm overwhelmed with the responses, and I think it is something that unifies people, and it's brought together people both from the Democrat side of the aisle as well as the Republican side of the aisle, because to me this isn't about whether the president is Republican or Democrat. I've supported several of his nominees. I've supported people because I think he has the right to make political nominations, even though I don't agree with a lot of, or really much of any of the nominees or the politics of the administration. This is different. This is a constitutional principle. We're here today to filibuster against or for a constitutional principle, not necessarily an individual. But it's something that, you know, I think a lot of Americans believe strongly, and I thank very much, Mr. President, the comments that I've gotten from the senator. Would they entertain any other questions?
I thank the senator from Kentucky, and I do indeed have additional questions. You know, the heart of what you're standing for, what so many other senators tonight are standing for, is liberty. And that, I think, has always been the foundational value in the United States of America. Our country was founded by framers who understood that concentrated power is always inimical to liberty. That any time great power is undivided, that the freedom of the people is at jeopardy. As Lord Acton observed, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It is for that reason that the framers of our Constitution did what the Supreme Court has described as splitting the atom of sovereignty, taking what used to be one discrete, indivisible concept of power and sovereignty and breaking it up between the three branches of the federal government and breaking it up between the federal government and the 50 states and the local governments as well. And the purpose of doing all of that is to prevent what James Madison in Federalist Number 10 described as factions. Today we would call them special interests that might take control of one branch of government. If all power were concentrated in the executive, and one faction, one special interest were to gain influence in that executive, then the liberty of the people would be at peril. And in Federalist 10, Madison explained that factions are never going to go away. Human nature is such that we will divide into factions with different interests, and the genius of the framers was not to imagine human nature was somehow different than it was, but to recognize that it was. As the Federalist Papers explained, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. The great challenge in forming a government is to enable the government to do what it must, and yet at the same time oblige it to govern itself. And for that reason, splitting the atom of sovereignty, separating power, prevents any one branch of government from acquiring unchecked power. It is indeed the responsibility of this body to do what we're doing now. if a president of the United States decrees the power to take the lives of U.S. citizens on U.S. soil without due process of law, I would suggest it is integral to the oath of office of every member of the United States Senate and every member of the United States House of Representatives to stand up and say, Mr. President, respectfully, no, you may not. The Constitution gives you no such power, and each of us on entering office, in my case, just a few weeks ago, standing on those steps, the Vice President asked me to raise my hand and take an oath to honor and defend the Constitution. Every member of this body took that oath, and it is our responsibility, especially when one branch of the government is overreaching, is usurping power that the Constitution forbids him and that is threatening to the liberty of the people. It is the responsibility of all of us to stand up and resist that. You know, one of my all-time heroes, Ayn Rand, in Atlas Shrugged, described how the parasitical class would put into place arbitrary power. Standardless rules, precisely so the productive citizens in the private sector would have to come on bended knee to those in government seeking special dispensation, seeking special favor. Because that arbitrary and standardless rule empowers the political class and disempowers the people. I couldn't help but think about Ayn Rand's observations this morning as I heard the Attorney General over and over and over again refuse to say it would be unconstitutional for the federal government to kill a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil. Now, he would say it would be inappropriate. He said that 3 times in response to direct questioning. It would be inappropriate, and we should trust him. The federal government would not do so. And I found myself thinking of those arbitrary standards Ayn Rand talked about. That if the only protection we the people have against the federal government choosing to take the life of a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil is our trust that they would refrain from doing what is inappropriate, rather than the protections of the Constitution, then I would suggest our liberty is fragile indeed. Indeed, when you think about the concentration of power, no judicial opinion is more important than Justice Robert Jackson's concurring opinion in the Youngstown steel seizure case. Now, Justice Jackson, as the senator from Kentucky knows, was a giant on the U.S. Supreme Court. My former boss, Chief Justice William Rehnquist, served as a law clerk to Justice Robert Jackson. And indeed, Justice Jackson took time off from serving on the U.S. Supreme Court to serve as the chief prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials, during which he made the powerful observation following World War II when the United States brought to trial the horrific war criminals in the Nazi regime. Justice Jackson observed at Nuremberg that 4 great nations, flushed with victory and stung with injury, stay the hand of vengeance and voluntarily submit their captive enemies to the judgment of the law, is one of the most significant tributes that power has ever paid to reason. I would suggest to the senator from Kentucky, and I feel confident he would agree, that what we are talking about right now is the tribute that power must and should pay to reason, and that unchecked power is always a threat to liberty. Now, as Justice Jackson opined in Youngstown steel seizure, that comprehensive and undefined presidential powers hold both practical advantages and grave dangers for the country, will impress anyone who has served as a legal advisor to a president in a time of transition and public anxiety. Those words could have been written as easily tonight as they were half a century ago. Justice Jackson continued, while the Constitution diffuses power to better secure liberty, it also contemplates that practice will integrate the dispersed power into a workable government. It enjoins upon its branches separateness but interdependence, autonomy but reciprocity. Presidential powers are not fixed but fluctuate, depending on their disjunction or conjunction with those of Congress. When a president acts pursuant to an express or implied authorization of Congress, his authority is at its maximum. I think there can be no disputing that any claim of presidential authority to kill U.S. citizens on U.S. soil in absence of an imminent threat has no express or implied authorization of Congress, and that presidential authority is wanting. Number two, Justice Jackson explains, when the president acts in the absence of either a congressional grant or denial of authority, he can only rely upon his own independent powers. But there is a zone of twilight in which he and Congress may have concurrent authority, or in which the distribution is uncertain. Therefore, congressional inertia, indifference, or quiescence may sometimes, at least as a practical matter, enable, if not invite, measures on independent presidential responsibility. In this area, any actual test of power is likely to depend upon the imperatives of the events and contemporary imponderables rather than on abstract theories of law. Now, perhaps prior to 11:45 today, Attorney General Eric Holder and John Brennan would have argued they fall into this second category, a category where Congress has been silent, and accordingly, they might presume some presidential power. But as of 11:45 today, they can no longer claim that. Justice Jackson explained the third category of presidential powers. When the president takes measures incompatible with the express or implied will of Congress,